was kind of a unique thing that the history should be recorded better on. And that was that surfers came here, at least from California and northern hemisphere, in the winter, and you needed surf trunks. So in summer in California, you could buy surf trunks, but in winter, you couldn't buy any in California either because nobody was surfing much, or everybody just used their summer shorts. And the clothing companies weren't really making surfer clothes; they were just making swimming pants or shorts. If you came here in the winter with your summer surf shorts that you'd already been using for 3 or 4 or 5 months, and then you were here and the environment here was much more extreme, you could blow those out, wear through them or tear them or something. And there was nobody here in the winter selling surf trunks. Even though the weather was nice, they couldn't buy any because the only producers of that sort of stuff was in California and a little bit in Honolulu. But we had a local tailor out here who was the tailor back from the plantation days. And that was H. Mira. And do you know where that building was? That's now San Lorenzo Bikini. So that was a tailor, and all they had in there was reams and reams of cloth and a half a dozen sewing machines, and ladies working continuously in there making aloha shirts and surf trunks. So that's what we all did. We all bought surf trunks from H. Mira. And you'd get them custom. They'd measure you. You could choose coconut buttons, bamboo buttons, no zippers or Velcro back in those days on surf trunks. They have ledgers with everybody's names in them and all their measurements going all the way back to the beginning of time. Jane and Catherine were the daughters, and they were born in the Surf and Sea building. They'd be in their 90s now. I haven't seen them for a long time. They used to pop in, or I'd see them. They sold their building and kind of disappeared. And so that was probably the only business that was taking place because surfers were arriving from somewhere else. They get an aloha shirt. It was one of the things that popularized aloha shirts so much, is because they'd all be taken back to the mainland, and people would see it. Where did you get that cool shirt and that cool cloth? It wouldn't sense anything that anybody had in inventory in California. It's very special. That was all longboard surfing. You know what I mean when I say that, the boards that look like a tongue depressor. And for the most part anyway. And those boards didn't work very good in Hawaiian surf, and especially not in big Hawaiian surf. So a few guys started customizing those kind of designs and making them a little more gunny shaped, a little pointier at the ends, and for bigger waves. And that helped, but they still weren't very maneuverable, and they were super heavy, and it just limited. It would have been like trying to race a family station wagon at Le Mans or something, in France. And but the sport and the equipment hadn't advanced that far yet. And so in about 1967, we had what was called the Shortboard Revolution, and the boards started to be made more small, and it kind of forked and branched into two kinds of boards: these shorter, eggier, shorter sort of shape, like as if the longboard had this 2-foot chunk cut out of the middle of it, or these mini guns, which were like these big gun boards that I was saying that some guys were making for big waves in Hawaii. They were just shrunk down into little smaller versions. And Dick Brewer here in Hawaii was kind of a pioneer of that. And the little eggier type boards was kind of an Australian sort of an influence. A lot of this was generated by another guy named George Greeno, who was from Santa Barbara, California. He was a knee boarder, and so he rode really short little boards and could do all kinds of really great maneuvers. And everybody saw that and went, wow, I wonder if I could do that standing up on my surfboard. I wasn't really excited about coming here and riding big waves. But as soon as the boards got smaller and more maneuverable, I went, oh, wow, this changes everything. Suddenly I was out on the racetrack at Le Mans with a proper car and going, this is going to be fun. Where's the next racetrack? The boards we had were super evolved compared to everything previous to that. But nobody had figured out where it was going to be going. And so it was literally changing week to week, month to month, and figuring out how wide we were going to make them, how thick. And as we were doing this, you had to sort of wait for the consumer of those boards to catch up. So a guy who was small like me, I could make a small, narrow board for myself, and I'd be really liking it. And if I was surfing well, somebody would see it, but that guy might be 200 pounds. You would have to then make a board more proportional to what would be appropriate for him. But all this was moving very sluggishly because surfing is a very, it's almost like women's fashion. Everybody wants the cool thing when it's cool, and they don't want it anymore when it's not cool. The problem is in surfboards, that thing has a function, and that coolness and the design or the tail or the shapes can be reflective of how the board's going to work. So you can't just have something that looks cool if it doesn't work good, right? But you have to go out and surf it to discover it doesn't work good. And then you go, oh, crap, that was really a bad idea. Go back to the shop, change the board or make a whole new one or move the fin around. And that was the kind of evolution we were doing. And previous to that, that was very little of that evolution going on because the boards all through the 60s stayed the same. They only started to change like in 67, right? They were just mass produced by big companies like Hobie and Bing and all these people. I'm not saying they were bad boards, but they were very stagnant. So now 67, 68, 69, 70, that 4 years or so was a crazy amount of evolution. And it kind of overlapped the music industry and everything else. The music just changed radically during that time, and it was a lot of cool stuff. And then because we finally had boards that pretty consistently would work good. They still weren't as short as we were going to go, but they were short enough that you felt like you had control over the board instead of the board being this massive thing that once it got going in one direction, you just sort of had to hang on and hope to just slightly guide it around. And that was just fun. And